Hi, welcome back, true believers. Well, we'll look at Phase 3 of the MCU now continues on with Doctor Strange. At Kathmandu, the sorcerer Caecilius and his zealots enter the secret compound Camartage and behead its librarian. They steal a few pages from an ancient mystical text belonging to the Ancient One, a long-lived sorcerer who has taught every student at Camartage, including Caecilius, in the mystic arts. The Ancient One pursues the traitors, but Caecilius and his followers escape. In New York City, Dr. Stephen Strange, a wealthy, acclaimed, and arrogant neurosurgeon, severely injures his hands in a car crash while en route to a speaking conference, leaving him permanently unable to operate. Fellow surgeon Christine Palmer tries to help him move on, but Strange vainly pursues experimental surgeries to heal his hands. Strange learns about Jonathan Pangborn, a paraplegic who mysteriously regained use of his legs. Pangborn directs Strange to Camartage, where he's taken by Murdo, a sorcerer under the Ancient One. The Ancient One demonstrates her power to Strange, revealing the astral plane and other dimensions such as the mirror dimension. She reluctantly agrees to train Strange, whose arrogance and ambition remind her of Caecilius. Strange studies under the Ancient One and Murdo, and from ancient books to the library that is now guarded by Master Wong. Strange learns that Earth is protected from threats from other dimensions by a shield generated from 3 buildings called sanctums in New York City, London, and Hong Kong, which are all directly accessible for Camartage. The sorcerer's task is to protect the sanctums. The Pangborn instead chose to channel mystical energy only into walking again. Strange progresses quickly. It secretly reads from the text from which Caecilius stole pages, learning to bend time with the mystical Eye of Agamotto. Mortar and Wong warn Strange about breaking the laws of nature, drawing comparison to Caecilius' desire for eternal life. Caecilius uses the stolen pages to contact Dormammu of the Dark Dimension, where time is non-existent. Caecilius destroys the London sanctum to weaken Earth's protection. The Zealots then attack the New York sanctum, killing its guardian, but Strange holds them off with the help of the Cloak of Levitation, only to be critically injured during a skirmish. He teleports himself back to the hospital, where Palmer saves him. Upon returning to the sanctum, Strange reveals to Murdo that the Ancient One has been drawing power from the Dark Dimension to sustain her long life, and Murdo becomes disillusioned with the Ancient One. After fighting the mirror dimension of New York, Caecilius mortally wounds the Ancient One and escapes to Hong Kong. Before dying, she tells Strange that he too will have to bend the rules to complement Murdo's steadfast nature in order to defeat Caecilius. Strange and Murdo arrive in Hong Kong to find Wong dead, the sanctum destroyed, and the Dark Dimension engulfing Earth. Strange uses the Eye to reverse time and save Wong, then enters the Dark Dimension and creates a time loop around himself and Dormammu. After repeatedly killing Strange to no avail, Dormammu finally gives in to Strange's demand that he permanently leave Earth alone and take Caecilius' insults with him in return for Strange breaking the loop. Disillusioned by Strange and the Ancient One defying nature's laws, Murdo renounces his sorcerer career and departs. Strange returns the Eye to Camartage and takes up residence in the New York sanctum to continue his studies with Wong. In a mid-credit scene, Strange decides to help Thor, who is surprised by the Loki to Earth to search for his father, Odin. In a post-credit scene, Murdo confronts Pangborn and steals the mystical energy he uses to walk, telling him that Earth has too many sorcerers. Dun dun dun. So now let's take a look at the production of this movie, beginning with the development. A film based on the Marvel Comics character Doctor Strange was initially listed as being in development at New World Pictures, with a script dated January 21st, 1986 by Bob Gale, which never went further into production. By 1989, Alex Cox had co-written a script with Doctor Strange co-creator Stan Lee. The script had the character traveling to the 4th dimension before facing the villain Dormammu on Easter Island, Chile. A film using the script was almost made by Regency, but the company's films were distributed by Warner Bros. At the time, which was in a dispute with Marvel over merchandising. Around this time, producer Charles Band optioned the property for Marvel and began developing a film at his studio Full Moon Entertainment. However, the option expired before production could begin, and the project was reworked into the 1992 film Dr. Mordred, whose titular character bore similarities to Doctor Strange. By December 1992, Wes Craven had signed on to write and direct Doctor Strange for release either 1994 or 1995, with Savoy Pictures distributing. In 1995, David S. Goyer had completed a script for the film. By April 1997, Columbia Pictures had purchased the film rights, and Jeff Welch was writing a new screenplay, with Brandy Brillstein and Brad Gray producing. By April 2000, Columbia dropped Doctor Strange, which then had Michael France attached to a script and interest from Chuck Russell and Stephen Norrington to direct. By June 2001, Dementia Films acquired the film rights, with Goyer back on board as writer and director. Goyer hinted scheduling conflicts might ensue with the film adaptation Murder Mysteries, and promised not to be highly dependent on computer-generated imagery. However, by August 2001, Miramax acquired the film rights from Dimension, and by March 2002, Goyer had dropped out of the project. A 2005 release date was announced the next March, while in June 2004, a script still had yet to be written. Marvel Studios CEO Avi Arad stated, quote, "We are nowhere with that. That's a tough one to write, but we are working on it. We are trying to find the real Jerry Garcia of the writing community." In April 2005, Paramount Pictures acquired Doctor Strange from Miramax as part of Marvel Studios' attempt to independently produce their own films. At the time, the film was projected to have a budget of no more than $165 million. In 2007, Guillermo del Toro and Neil Gaiman pitched a version of the film to Marvel, with Gaiman writing and del Toro directing. Gaiman was especially interested, including the character Clea, but the studio was not interested. In March 2009, Marvel hired writers to help come up with creative ways to launch its lesser-known properties, including Doctor Strange. In June 2010, Marvel Studios hired Thomas Dean Donnelly and Joshua Oppenheimer to write Doctor Strange. While promoting Transformers Dark of the Moon in April 2011, actor Patrick Dempsey indicated he was lobbying to play the title character. In January 2013, Marvel Studios President Kevin Feige confirmed that Doctor Strange would appear in some capacity as part of Phase 3 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Feige then reiterated that a Doctor Strange feature film was in development at Marvel Studios that May, and again in November. In February 2014, The Hollywood Reporter wrote that Marvel was considering Mark Andrews, Jonathan Levine, Nikolai Arcel, and Dean Israeli to direct the film. It was considering Jonathan Abel and Glenn Berger to rewrite the film's script. Feige denied this report, but confirmed that Marvel was considering prospective candidates. By March, Marvel was considering Andrews, Levine, and Scott Derrickson to direct the film. And now on to the pre-production. In June 2014, Derrickson was chosen to direct the film. He wrote a 12-page scene for the film featuring Strange and an assailant fighting in the astral plane while a doctor attempts to save Strange's physical body in a hospital, based on a sequence from the comic Doctor Strange, The Oath. Derrickson illustrated the sequence with his own concept art, alongside storyboards from professional artists and an animatic, which were presented in a 90-minute pitch to the studio. This cost Derrickson an obnoxious amount of his own money, but felt it was necessary to prove, quote, that I wanted the job more than anyone, especially after Marvel told him that more people had lobbied to direct Doctor Strange than any of their other films. Derrickson ultimately had 8 meetings with Marvel for the film. After he was hired, Marvel bought the 12-page scene from Derrickson, and it became one of the film's main set pieces. On transitioning from horror films to a superhero film, Derrickson said, quote, "It was nice to work on something more positive, and not have my headspace in something so dark for so long. But it was also really similar to because of the fantastical nature of the movie." In his horror films, Derrickson tried to use real characters and real character drama to played by good actors, to encounter the fantastical. And so he wanted actors of the same high caliber for Doctor Strange, through which he could introduce the more fantastical elements to the MCU. Derrickson and Marvel had originally discussed him writing the film alongside his sinister co-writer C. Robert Cargill, with Derrickson also directing. But Marvel felt that they would not be able to reach their intended release date of July 2016 if Derrickson filled both roles. When Derrickson was chosen as director, Marvel passed on Cargill as an individual writer, with John Spathis hired to rewrite the script instead. Spathis, a big fan of Doctor Strange as a child, had started pestering Marvel as soon as he had read reports of the company searching for a director for the film. This eventually led to him meeting with the studio before they actually began looking for writers for the film. Spathis had said that they talked all afternoon and the fit was right, but he received a call from Marvel several days later saying that they were not completely sure that they wanted to take the film in the same direction as Spates. Sorry, I keep mispronouncing that. And we're going to look for other writers. Space told his agent not to take that answer. Call them back, tell them there's a lot of right answers, and get me back in the room. And after talking with Marvel for another 3 or 4 hours, he was given the job. Marvel never seriously looked at any other writer for the film. Derrickson was already hired when Space joined, and the pair spent several months working on the film's story with Feige and executive producer Stephen Broussard. They started writing the film from the beginning, and were initially unsure whether it would be an origin story, or if it began with Strange already as a fully formed sorcerer. Space ultimately felt that the origin story of this character, as depicted in the comics, is so operatic and beautiful, and so tragic and epic in its sweep that it was unavoidable. We had to tell that story and tell our best version of it. Elements from Space's earlier drafts that he later stated were in the final film include many of the film's set pieces, such as the climactic battle, which came straight from Derrickson, as well as little things from Space, like a bandaged hand running down a row of prayer bells in a police temple. Derrickson wanted Nightmare to be the film's antagonist, along with the concept of nightmares themselves as being a dimension. But Feige felt that getting across the idea of the dream dimension as another dimension would have been challenging alongside everything else in the film, everything else that the film introduces. Dormammu, the most present villain in the comics, became the film's main villain. During the early development process, Marvel, Derrickson, and Space all envisioned Benedict Cumberbatch playing the title role. By the end of June, Marvel had been reportedly looking at Tom Hardy and Jared Leto for the film's lead as well. Edgar Ramirez, who worked with Derrickson on 2014's Deliver Us from Evil, had discussed a possible role with the director. In July, after fans in the media had also championed Cumberbatch for the role of Doctor Strange, the actor explained that 2014 San Diego Comic-Con International that he would be unable to accept the role due to commitments to other projects. Feige stated that lead actor would be announced relatively quickly, and by the end of the month, Joaquin Phoenix entered talks to play the character. By September 2014, Marvel Studios was in negotiations to shoot Doctor Strange at Pinewood Shepperton in England, with crews being assembled for a move into Shepperton Studios in late 2014 or early 2015 for filming in May 2015. Negotiations with Phoenix ended in October 2014, as the actor felt that blockbuster films would never be fulfilling, with, quote, too many requirements to win against his instincts for character. Marvel then placed Leto, Ethan Hawke, Oscar Isaac, Ewan McGregor, Matthew McConaughey, Jake Gyllenhaal, Colin Farrell, and Keanu Reeves on their shortlist for the character. Ryan Gosling also had discussions to play the character, while Reeves was not approached about the role, and Cumberbatch was still considered to be in contention. In October, Cumberbatch entered negotiations to play the character and was officially cast in December. Feige explained that Marvel had kept returning to him for the role while considering other actors, Derrickson noting that even during discussions with Phoenix, he and Marvel still wanted to cast Cumberbatch in the role. The company eventually decided to change the film's production schedule to fit around Cumberbatch's commitments, allowing him to join the project. With the film's new production schedule, its intended release date was pushed back to November 2016, and Derrickson was able to do some work on the script himself. He brought Cargill into work with him on this as was originally planned. Describing the film, Cargill called it both a superhero film and a fantasy film, saying, quote, it's a very magical fantasy universe, but at the same time it plays by some of the superhero tropes that people enjoy. Space returned later in the process to do some more writing and help bring the movie home. He said he was delighted by the work that Derrickson and Cargill had done in the interim. Feige and Derrickson have noted that, in addition to The Oath and Steve Ditko's original work on Doctor Strange, influence on all the film's writers was the Doctor Strange comic book Into Shambhala. In January 2015, Chiwetel Ejiofor entered preliminary talks with Marvel for a role in the film, later revealed to be Carl Mordo. Ejiofor's role was confirmed during the 2015 D23 Expo. In April, Derrickson and members of the production team visited New York City to scout potential filming locations. Feige revealed the filming would begin that November. A month later, Tilda Swinton was in talks to play the Ancient One. In June 2015, Derrickson announced that he was going to London to begin work on the film. and Feige confirmed that Strange's Sanctum Sanctorum would appear, located in Bleecker Street in New York City's Greenwich Village, as in the comics. Swinton confirmed her role in the film in July, when Rachel McAdams was being considered for the female lead. McAdams cautioned that, quote, "It's still super early, and I don't know where that's going to go, if it's going to go anywhere at all." But she ultimately confirmed her role during the 2015 Toronto International Film Festival. Jessica Chastain had been approached for the role before McAdams, but turned down the opportunity because she felt she was only going to get one shot at being in a Marvel film and wanted to be a lead character. Mads Mikkelsen entered into early negotiations to play a villain in August. Quote, "One of a number of actors being considered for the unspecified villainous role." In September 2015, Guardians of the Galaxy director James Gunn stated that many of the crew that worked on that film were unable to return for its sequel because they had committed to Doctor Strange. Derrickson also revealed that Gunn had provided notes on the script, beyond the general conversing the MCU directors have between themselves for their films. At the end of the month, Feige stated that additional casting announcements would be made before the end of the year. And by early November, Michael Stuhlbarg entered negotiations to appear in the film as Nicodemus West, a rival of Strange. Derrickson offered the role to Stuhlbarg because he was interested in working with the actor, and he agreed to join the cast after reading some Doctor Strange comics and being drawn toward the characters Gilbert and Ark, where West, quote, blames himself for ruining the surgery on Strange's hands and robbing him of his ability to operate. Feige felt that the visuals of the film needed to be a Ditko/Kubrick/Miyazaki/The Matrix mind trip, and said that, quote, You don't get into it in Harry Potter, but if a scientist went to Hogwarts, you find out how some of that stuff is happening. We're not going to spend a lot of time on that, but there will be some of that. Particularly for a character like Strange, who goes from a man of science to a man of faith and who traverses both worlds. In developing the film's magic, Derrickson felt a responsibility to not repeat the representation of magic in previous films, like Fantasia and Harry Potter, wanting to find a new way to make it feel more tactical and real and surreal, and rooted in gestures as opposed to spoken incantations and things like that. Feige called Doctor Strange the doorway into the supernatural side of the MCU, a role that Derrickson noted was also served by the character in the early comics. When the Doctor Strange comics broke open the Marvel book universe into the Marvel multiverse. Discussing the portrayal of other dimensions in the film, Feige said they would not explore parallel realities like the comics Earth 616 and Earth 617, but would instead feature dimensions that are so mind-bending that you can barely perceive them, like the astral plane, dark dimension, and the mirror dimension. Astrophysicist Adam Frank served as a scientific consultant on the film, or having known Derrickson and been a Marvel fan since childhood. Frank advised on, quote, the human experience of space and time, helping Marvel conceive ideas for the cinematic multiverse, and suggesting dialogue for characters based on their beliefs, whether materialist, rationalist, reductionist, or, quote, have this enlarged perspective. He noted that modern moviegoers may not necessarily understand these complex scientific ideas, but do appreciate that amazing things happen from science. So by grounding your stories in science, to not so much make them plausible, but to allow that science to open up new possibilities, people are used to that in their lives. So I think it makes sense to them, and it's exciting to them. This was an aspect of previous MCU films that Frank called a great thing, speaking as a scientist, saying that they built a coherent and consistent universe that respects the scientific process and that uses enough of real science to make things plausible or build off them. And now on to the filming. There we go. Principal photography began in Nepal on November 4th, 2015, under the working title Checkmate. Ben Davis, serving as cinematographer for the film after doing the same on Guardians of the Galaxy and Avengers Age of Ultron, described Doctor Strange as Marvel's Fantasia, and noted that a lot of pre-visualization was required to figure out how to shoot the psychedelic MC Escher-inspired imagery. Davis used the Arri Alexa 65 camera for the film, alongside the Arri Alexa XT+. Vision Research Phantom Flex 4Ks, which shot up to 1,000 frames per second, were used for high-speed sequences like Strange's car crash. Derrickson chose Nepal as a location to feature an eastern city that would not be familiar to most audiences. After scouting and deciding on locations in the country, many of those areas were destroyed by the April 2015 Nepal earthquake. Rather than choosing another country, Derrickson and Cumberbatch felt that bringing attention and tourism to Nepal following the event was all the more reason to shoot there. Cargill said that the location of Kamartaj was shifted from Tibet to Nepal to prevent censorship by the Chinese government. Cumberbatch said that shooting Nepal was, quote, absolutely vital to this film. I think not least because it's so based on something that is exotic. It was a magical way to start the shoot. It's important to a film like this, which has a profound gear shift into a spiritual and otherworldly dimension, that the portal for that to be in a place that actually happens in itself to be incredibly spiritual and marvelous. The eventual filming locations around the Kathmandu Valley included the Pashupatinath and Swayambhunath temples, sorry if I mispronounced those, the Melanu Road in Kathmandu, and the Patan Jobar Square in Bhutan. Production moved to Longcross Studios in Surrey, England on November 11th, and was scheduled to stay there until March 2016. The real Kathmandu street that led into the fictional Kamartaj courtyard was replicated at Longcross, which producers there in Charleswood described as, quote, very hard because Kathmandu was the most beautiful city and steeped in history. To transition from that level of detail in history, with the shape of the streets, the warping of the buildings, these ancient bricks and these ancient tiles, was a real challenge. For authenticity, the street was dressed with real food and populated with dogs, pigeons, and Nepalese extras, many of whom were relatives of people who live on the real Kathmandu street. The inside of Kamartaj was also constructed along Cross, the sculptors creating beautiful columns of wall decorations, and craftsmen building screens and doors to evoke the exotic feel of the real sanctuary. One goal was to make the set feel like the ancient one and her disciples actually lived there, and give it a truly spiritual, truly magical feel, integrating it into a real building that the production filmed in Kathmandu. This and the Kathmandu Street were one of 21 sets that the crew built along Cross. Others included Doctor Strange's Sanctum Sanctorum and Hong Kong Street complete with over 80 neon signs and a giant roof to keep the rain out. City Point or Roadmaker Street, London, doubled as the New York City building where the ancient one falls to her death. Filming also took place in Hong Kong and in New York City's Hell's Kitchen neighborhood. Initial New York City set scenes were shot at Shepperton Studios and later in London. By the end of November, the casting of Mikkelsen and Stolberg was confirmed, alongside Amy Landecker and Scott Adkins in unspecified roles. Additionally, Benedict Wong heard about the film from his friend Ejiofor and sought a role in it himself. He was cast as Wong in January and really joined the production for filming. Lamborghini provided 6 Huracan LP610-4s for use in the film, one of which the production wrecked during filming. Lamborghini said that they felt, quote, there are a lot of characteristics of Doctor Strange are connected with the Lamborghini philosophy. The Lamborghini Car Crash scene was filmed at Northfleet, Kent by the River Thames. Also in January 2016, filming took place at Exeter College, Oxford. The next month, Feige revealed that the film originally had a prologue that took place in CERN, due to the real-world research being done at the facility to alter the dimensions and parallel universes. Production of the city's Flatiron District in April, where photos revealed that Zara Pythian had joined the cast. Principal photography wrapped in New York City on April 3rd, 2016. And now on to the post-production. In June 2016, hold on. Okay, sorry, I thought I had burped there. Anyway, in June 2016, a Diamond Select Toys press release for Doctor Strange toys and the Marvel Minimates line named Mikkelsen's character Caecilius and McAdams' character Christine Palmer. Mikkelsen's role was confirmed in an official Italian comic for the film, while McAdams was confirmed at San Diego Comic-Con 2016. Additionally, Benjamin Bratt was revealed to have been cast as Jonathan Pangborn. Atkins' role was revealed to be Lucian, a follower of Caecilius. Landecker's role was later to be revealed anesthesiologist Dr. Brunner. The latter was mostly cut from the film, with Landecker explaining that she had been cast in the small role for 2 scenes at the beginning of the film, because Derrickson was a fan of her performance in A Serious Man, which also starred Stuhlbarg. After filming her first scene, in which she is estranged with the surgery, Landecker asked not to be involved in the other scene because she had no lines for it. It was only seen from behind. Instead, wished to attend a special premiere at the White House for her series Transparent. The actress believed she was later cut from the first scene, but she's still credited for a brief appearance. Also, Derrickson revealed that Lulu Wilson had been cast as Strange's sister for scenes depicting her drowning at a young age. The scene had been shot, and Derrickson thought it was great as a self-contained scene, but it didn't work for the rest of the film and was cut. Also at San Diego Comic-Con, Derrickson noted that there were still a couple pickup shots to do for the film to clarify the logic. Further content for the film's training sequence was also shot during these reshoots, as this audiences loved the training portion of the film and wanted more. Wong indicated that the reshoots had been completed in August. Dan Harmon wrote material for these additional scenes, which Derrickson described as script analysis and dialogue work, not enough to receive credit in the film. Feige said that in addition to any humor that Harmon could add to the film, he was brought on to give us his options on the sci-fi concepts. Before the film's sets were demolished, Thor Ragnarok director Taika Waititi took advantage by filming a scene featuring Strange meeting Chris Hemsworth's Thor. The scene was for Ragnarok and shot before the film began production. Derrickson, however, felt that the scene was kind of perfect as Strange joining the wider MCU after a standalone introduction, and so added it to Doctor Strange's mid-credits scene. A post-credits scene, directed by Derrickson, teases Warner's role as antagonist to Strange in a potential Doctor Strange sequel. Stanley's cameo in the film was directed by Gunn on the set of Guardians of the Galaxy Vol. 2. This was alongside several other lead cameos, to limit the amount of travel he had to do for the next 4 MCU films. Gunn contacted Derrickson during the shoot to ensure that the shot matched up with the respective Doctor Strange scene, and kept throwing lines at Lee on the day to give Derrickson and Marvel plenty of options to choose from for the film. Additionally, additional options Gunn filmed included Lee reading a book and asking a gentleman next to him if he knows what the word Excelsior meant. Lee laughing really hard and stating he was laughing for no reason, being totally crazy, and Lee laughing his during a Garfield book, and the character hates Mondays but he loves lasagna. Gunn felt that the Garfield option was originally meant to appear in the final version of the film, but ended up being too long for the scene. By October 10th, 2016, Derrickson had completed the film. Feige described the film's use of 3D as serving the storytelling, saying, quote, "Hopefully it bends people's minds even more than just with the flat screen." It said that there are sequences of the film that 3D is absolutely necessary to tell the dimensional story that is happening through visuals. However, he noted that during visual effects reviews for the film, it became apparent that these sequences were adversely affecting the story when viewed in 2D, which necessitated adjustments so the sequences would work in all formats. Over 1 hour footage for the film was specifically formatted for IMAX. And now, let's look at the visual effects. Visual effects for Doctor Strange were provided by Industrial Light and Magic, Method Studios, Framestore, Lola VFX, Luma Pictures, Rise FX, Crafty Apes, and SPOV, contributing to the 1,450 effects shots. Pre-visualization was handled by the third floor. All vendors worked on the common magical elements: mandalas, magic runes, shields, whips, stocks, and aerial lily pads and portals. Visual effects supervisor Stefan Coretti, who also worked on Guardians of the Galaxy, explained the similarities and differences between the two films, saying, quote, "There's some resemblance to some of the things that we've done. In the same way, it's a totally different world. In Guardians, it's more sci-fi oriented and crazy colors, more of a comedy kind of take on things as well. This one is a little bit more serious. It's also a little bit more trippy, using very different techniques, actually. Guardians was also, for us, a huge animation film. This one was less of it. This one was more about the environments and effects." Further discussing the film's visuals, Derrickson described influences such as the Steve Ditko Stanley comics, which were all about weird visuals, as well as a frame of surrealist art and photography and MC Escher. Additional inspiration for the film's visuals came from a bunch of experimental fractal videos from YouTube that Derrickson found, as well as the mobile video game Monument Valley. Derrickson's ambition was to use cutting-edge visual effects to do things that are fresh and new, not just blow things up. Feige explained that one of the more difficult areas to be inventive was the action sequences, as Derrickson did not want them to simply be Someone shoots a bolt of lightning, someone blocks a ball of lightning, so someone throws another bolt of lightning. Instead, they try to incorporate the use of different dimensions into the action in the interest of creating a visual tapestry that's totally different in terms of an action scene we've ever seen in any other movies. On the film's set pieces, Derrickson reiterated that the film's astral fight scene was based on the Oath comic, while that the end fight was an attempt to capture the quality of that artwork from the original comics, and the Mirror Dimension chase was an attempt to take Inception to the nth degree and make it take it way more surreal and way farther. But it certainly owes something to that movie. Specifically for the climax of the film, Derrickson wanted to play on the superhero trope of a big fight when they're tearing up the city, and there's a portal opening up and they have to close it, starting it by having the villain defeated with an intelligent use of power rather than showing which CGI thing can hit the other CGI thing harder. Island worked on the Manhattan Mirror sequence, just because of their work in creating digital New York in the Avengers, and the TIE Fight sequence in Hong Kong, which consisted of 200 and 150 shots respectively. They began work on the film 10 months before filming began to plan out the Manhattan sequence. It was mainly CG, though some New York location shots were used. The sequence was mainly handled by ILM's San Francisco, Vancouver offices. The Hong Kong time sequence was done mainly by ILM's London office. ILM also created digital doubles for many of the actors, which were shared with the other vendors. Method Studios, who worked on the Quantum Realm and Ant-Man, worked on the Magical Mystery Tour sequence with Strange hurtling through various dimensions. The sequence was handled by Method's Los Angeles studios, with their Vancouver studio contributing the opening shot of the sequence. The other shot Method did not work on that sequence was the one that linked to Dormammu, as Luma Pictures assisted in his creation. They handled his other appearances in the film. Method created 7 dimensions for the sequence: the initial wormhole to the speaker cone, the bioluminescence world, the fractals of solid world, a version of the quantum realm, Strange falling through his own eye in cosmic scream, the dark dimension, and the shape-shifting realm. The shape-shifting realm originally had Strange morphing and changing shape, but this was ultimately removed as Derrickson felt the audience needed to see Cumberbatch. Method's Vancouver studio created Strange's Car Crash, the rooftop training, and the sequence in which Strange experiments with time on an apple in the Comertage Library. The Car Crash blended the high-speed photography and some green screen sequences, with digital assets for both Cumberbatch and the car. In total, Method worked on 270 effect shots. Framestar was chosen to work on the Cloak of Levitation due to their work creating Rocket and Guardians of the Galaxy. Serretti called Cloak's actions kind of scripted but not as deeply as the end result, and said that during the pre-visualization process, quote, "We had a big discussion about the arc of the story of the Cloak in the film." Framestar also worked on environment shots, the Mandelbrot set sequences, high-resolution digital doubles, the astral form, and the crimson bands of Sidorak, restrained for Caecilius, showing over 365 shots. Alexis Washbrod, sorry if I mispronounced that, Framestar CG supervisor, called the astral form one of the hardest effects we've had to deal with at Framestar, finding the right balance of a look that was subtle but also beautiful. Lola VFX worked on the Zealot's eyes, supplementing the makeup work with effects based on a geode. They also created digital tears for Caecilius when he is in the crimson bands of Sidorak. In addition to Dormammu in the Dark Dimension, Luma Pictures also created the first mirror sequence at the beginning of the film. In creating Dormammu, Serretti stated that they wanted to avoid the fiery look he had from the comics as had done before. The whole idea is he is a character that lives in between dimensions. He can also take whatever shape he wants to take. When he's talking to Strange, you give it all these ripples in his face and all that stuff. These kind of window openings to other dimensions, and the reflective qualities of it. We really wanted to add the evocation of that fire, but we didn't want to do fire, so we went with a multicolored approach to try and keep the psychedelic look of the entire space. The Dark Dimension, Serretti said, we tried to make it alive all the time. The whole idea of the Dark Dimension is that it's a dynamic environment, with the Luma team referencing the Ditko art and poster. When lit with the backlight, it becomes very saturated with colors, crazy backlight colors. He continued, it was all about finding the right balance between all these elements to pay homage and to tribute the work of Steve Ditko, but to make it more current to the 21st century. If you look at the details of the shapes that we have in the dark dimension, you can almost point to things in the comic book that we really tried to be faithful to. And now finally on to the music. In May 2016, Michael Giacchino revealed that he would score the film. Derrickson called the score, quote, magic in the literal sense of the world. I think Giacchino is doing what good scorers do, which is he is not just creating music that supports the images. He's adding a third thing to the movie. It becomes something new with this music in there that it didn't have with temp music. The score was recorded at Abbey Road Studios. During a recording session, Paul McCartney heard one of Giacchino's cues being recorded and linked it to the Beatles song I Am the Walrus. Derrickson, a Bob Dylan fan, looked for a place in the film to include one of his songs, but could not find one. However, he was able to include the song Interstellar Overdrive by Pink Floyd. Derrickson hoped to use either Interstellar Overdrive or the Jimi Hendrix experience for the film's credits, but the royalties to use either in the credits was too expensive, resulting in Giacchino creating the track The Master of the Mystic end credits. A soundtrack album from Hollywood Records was released digitally on November 21st, 2016, with the physical release on November 18th, 2016. So overall, I really, really like this film, and Benedict Cumberbatch, he is the perfect choice to play Doctor Strange, and this movie is just, I love it so much, so there you go. So overall, I give Doctor Strange 5 arc reactors out of 5. Well, anyway, tune in tomorrow as we take a look at the next film in Phase 3, Guardians of the Galaxy, Volume 2. So until then, in the words of the late great Stan Lee, Excelsior!